What's good, everybody, man? Welcome back to Diasporas. We got some interesting stuff in here to discuss today, particularly about Mali, right? You know, the Sahel states have been a topic of discussion, right? Naturally, because of their unprecedented, right? This is not something we've particularly seen, even during colonization. And even though we've seen people who have had larger influence through their military or through their military leaders, right? One thing we haven't seen is fair trade among the West and the developing nations that give them all their goods, give them all their stuff. And the Sahel states are obviously in a completely different space when it comes to what they're demanding, right? And the professor, my father asked me, he said, is it better to go up from 10% to 30%? Or is it better to go down from 90% to 60%, right? Or 90% to 70%, right? On one end, you're still at 70%. You moved down 20, right? On the other end, you're at 30%, but you moved up 20. What is the problem with moving down when you're already a developing nation like Kenya or South Africa, or a developed nation like Kenya or South Africa, right? You don't want to move down. Even though that would increase your sovereignty, right? We got Mali securing 438 million from Barrick Gold in their resolution of this dispute, right? So let's go ahead on and dive into this because I really would like to um kind of talk about this a little bit more when it comes to how we can get better within this. So let's take a look at this. Mark Bristow, CEO of Barrick Gold, the Canadian mining giant and the world's second largest gold producer, is well acquainted with disputes involving African governments. I bet he is, right? In an interview with The Economist at a major African mining conference in Cape Town this month, he reflected on past clashes with leaders in Tanzania and Congo, likening them to an experienced boxer recalling old bouts. He dismissed an arrest warrant issued by Mali's government in December, accusing him of money laundering and financial violations, allegations he denies as simply part of doing business in difficult regions. That's funny, right? Mining is a long-term game, Bristow stated. The best way to resolve misunderstandings or disagreements is through dialogue, right? So let's pause there. Let's pause there. So he's already used to having these issues on the continent, right? But there's a couple of things I wanted to um, really get into. And that's first and foremost, we usually do not get paid for our resources at fair market share. Let's just start there. We know Africans do not get paid for their resources at fair market share. He continues, this article continues, Mali's junta, which seized power in 2020, has led the charge in tightening control over the mining sector. A state commission audit, which Mark Bristow dismisses as incorrect, claimed the government had lost nearly 1 billion in revenues, right? Of course he's going to say it's incorrect. Of course he's going to say it's incorrect, right? Why would he say that that's incorrect and all that would do is show the problematic approach, right? That the West has to this. Mali's approach has not gone unnoticed by its neighbors. Let's get to that in a second, right? Because again, I want to talk about the Sahel states, period. From 10 to 30%. Controversially, the new regulations were applied retroactively to existing operations rather than just future projects. So these new regulations that the ownership of the state went up 20%, right? Again, 10 to 30. These new regulations were backdated. Right? They're cold. That's what I'm talking about. Even before finalizing the deal with Barrick, Mali had secured or been promised over 635 million in additional tax payments, as reported by Reuters. In late 2024, Australia's Resolute Mining agreed to pay 160 million after its chief executive was detained for more than a week. So they were holding people until they got their bread. I know that's right. Right? They held people until they got paid. Mali's approach is not gone unnoticed by its neighbors. Last year, Niger's government revoked the mining license of Orano, a French state-owned nuclear fuel company. Amid ongoing legal proceedings, it blocked uranium exports and pledged to bring mines back to the public domain of the state, right? So that's something we need to discuss. Why doesn't the state own these things, right? Why doesn't the state own these things? And how can we start to break down some of these old guard um, regime policies that a lot of African countries run off of, right? How do we break them down? And that's really what the center of this conversation is as we continue, right? The Sahel states, similar to what Professor said, they have a lot less to lose, right? Not necessarily as developed. They've been getting completely screwed at a level that, you know, a country like Kenya has not been when it comes to the Brits, right? And so they can stand on all 10. I also don't think they have the same loan situation that a country like Kenya would have, right? But their overall relationships to the West are completely different. The question is again, why can't other countries do the same? What is the barrier to entry for other countries demanding their market share, right, for their natural resources? What are these barriers to entry? And I think that's one of the conversations that I want to continue, right? It continues here. Let's get this back. Continues here. Some worry that the motivations behind the three juntas' actions stem primarily from hostility toward the West. Really? Just hostility? It could have nothing to do with wanting to get paid fairly for their resources, right? In recent years, all three countries have expelled Western, primarily French troops, and turned to Russian mercenaries for assistance in fighting jihadists, right? An enemy of my enemy is my friend. Niger's confrontation with Orano, in particular, appears to be heavily influenced by geographical factors. In Mali and Burkina Faso, too, countries like Russia, China, and Turkey are poised to benefit from this shift, right? So this is another thing that the professor discussed. Are we trading? Are we trading one colonizer for another? Right? Are we trading one colonizer for another? Are we just signing another deal in blood with Russia, China, and Turkey across the continent? Just because China, Russia, and other countries on that side of the world have an issue with America doesn't mean that they have our best interest in mind when they help us with the West and other Western countries, right? It says, we see partners being preferred on the basis of nationality, a Western diplomat in Bamako observed. In December, Ganfeng Lithium, China's largest lithium producer, inaugurated a massive mine in southern Mali. The Russians and Chinese are stepping in. Who is losing? Asked Musa Kondo of the Sahel Institute, a Malian think tank. However, the geopolitical shift has its limits. Of the three countries, only Burkina Faso currently hosts a Russian-owned industrial mine. I don't think they actually want to break the relationship with Western multinationals, right? So this is actually a really complicated thing. And as we jump into it, I definitely want to get more into the analysis of some of these complexities, because we see what's going on is not just our doing. We're still signing deals, right? We're still signing deals as Africans, but we'll have more to come, and we'll be sure to keep talking about that. But I definitely had to report on this one, and look out for more content on it.